All right, hello there. Today we're excited to walk you through our projects that we've been working throughout the semester. It is a breakdown of the NFL draft and the salary analysis of those players. Here we'll be diving into players' position, draft dynamics, and salary structure, all and how all they connect, and what that means for teams trying to build a winning roster while managing their budget. This project was put together by Ethan, Fallon, and myself, and I'm really excited that you're here and really excited to show you what we have put together in this case. All right, so before we dive into the results, here's how we organized all the data behind the scene. And here's a quick look of how data models we used for our projects. So we brought together three main tables that you can see here: combined data, salary caps, and player data. So the combined data table includes players' physical and athletic measures. So in this case, we're looking at 40 dash time, vertical jumps, and other combined results that the NFL looks when they get drafted, right? And the player data table holds career stats that we're looking, so contract details like guaranteed and non-guaranteed money, and what side of the ball they play on. So in this case, we're talking about offensive or defensive side. And finally, the salary caps table tracks the total salary cap for each year across the NFL. We connected these tables mainly through player names and years, which allowed us to link draft performance and athletic measures to career outcomes and salaries. So this structure helped us explore not just salaries, but how performance at the combine might influence long-term earnings and career success. Okay, so as an avid NFL fan, I found this really interesting. So when we look at the average guaranteed contract value by position, the quarterback position completely dominates the field. So basically, quarterbacks are averaging just under 9.9 million guaranteed. And that's over five times higher than defensive linemen who are at the bottom with $1.5 million. It's not even close that if you're a quarterback, you are not just leading the team, you're also leading the bank account when it comes to money. For example, one of the renowned quarterback Patrick Mahomes has a 10-year contract with Kansas City Chiefs with $400 million for 10 years, right? So that translates to an average of $45 million, which in this case is an outlier because he's a really good player. But even average quarterback in NFL are getting at least a $10 million. That's a big sum of money, in my opinion. And what's also interesting is that right after QBs, the top guaranteed contracts belong to defensive linemen and offensive linemen. In this case, both of them are making around $5 million. So basically, it shows how much a team values protecting the quarterback and stopping the quarterback, right, from the tackles. Meanwhile, running backs who take a lot of punishment and a lot of hits are surprisingly low on the list. So that guaranteed money barely crosses $1.8 million on average, and overall across 19 positions, guaranteed contract value from $1.5 million to $10 million, which in this case shows a massive gap that really reflects on how differently the league values different roles. Okay, this is also really cool statistics that I found based on our data. So when we break down guaranteed contract value by side of the ball, there's a clear difference. Offensive players are pulling in higher average guaranteed money compared to defensive players. On average, offensive contracts are closer to $4 million, while defensive contracts sit a little over $3 million. This isn't too surprising when you think about it. The highest paid players, like quarterbacks, offensive tacklers, and wide receivers, are all of the offensive side. It really highlights how much teams are willing to invest in scoring points and protecting the quarterback. And, you know, in this case, people say that defense might win championship, but offense seems to have a bigger paychecks. So I'm not. This was very surprising to me, based on what the results that I found, and this is really interesting how NFL are valuing the offensive players rather than defensive players. Because of high amount of salary that NFL teams have to pay players, there has been increase over the span from 2000 to 2023. The NFL salary cap grew by incredible 261.58% in the past 23 years. Can you believe it? It jumped from around $62 million all the way up to $225 million in 2023. Just in 2023 alone, it made up about 7.12% of total salary cap across 24 years we looked at. The salary cap range during this period went from $62 million to $225 million, showing just how much the league has grown financially. There's a lot of ad revenue coming, and a lot of people are watching NFL games, and also a lot of NFL has been playing games outside of United States, so that has also brought a lot of viewership. So they're also making a good amount of money there as well. And there were a couple of years there was a dip, a small one in 2011 because of NFL lockout, and bigger drop in 2020 due to COVID-19 slashing the league's revenue. But after that, there was a strong rebound, especially with the new TV and media deal kicking in, plus overall rise in NFL popularity, like I mentioned earlier. So even with those terms hit, the long-term trend has been clear: steady and powerful growth, and NFL has been growing really exponentially after the COVID-19 hit, which is really, really nice to see.
So some calculated columns. This first one is to get salary caps into the player data table. We can use the related function there. And then contract wise, for each contract, there's usually guaranteed money and non-guaranteed money. So some examples of non-guaranteed money could be for roster bonuses. So if the player is not injured and active on the roster, they can get that bonus. There can be incentive bonuses where if a player gets more than a certain number of yards or a certain number of receptions or something like that, they can make more money that way. And options, where if the contract runs out, sometimes there's an option to stay with the team and make a little more money if the player chooses to do so. We do not have data on each type of non guaranteed money. We just have if total contract value and guaranteed contract value. So from that, we can calculate non guaranteed contract value, just total value minus guaranteed value. We can also make guaranteed contract value as a percentage of cap space, which is guaranteed value divided by the salary cap for that year. And percent guaranteed, like the percent of the contract that's guaranteed money, it should be over here guaranteed contract value divided by total contract value. But I noticed from visualization sometimes this is bigger than one, which should not happen. It means contract values or guaranteed contract value is bigger than the total. Um, so I have this if statement here to see if that happens and it's an erroneous data point, I leave it blank so it doesn't end up in our visualizations. And some more calculated columns, percent not guaranteed, just 1 minus percent guaranteed. Number of years in the league, before signing the contract is just the year signed minus the year drafted. And then I've got rookie contracts just as a Boolean variable we can use to filter with. And it's true if it is a rookie contract where the year signed is the same as the year drafted, that's rookie contract, and false otherwise. All right, here's a new column that just aggregates position and makes it more readable. So instead of these abbreviations like here DB for defensive back, SS for strong safety, and so on, I just call all these safety in the new column. And then here's the second row, CV for cornerback. I don't aggregate anything here. I just make it more readable, and I do that with all the positions here with the switch statement from DAX code. Yeah. And here's some graphs with combine performance info. So some of the combine drills are very similar, like broad jump and vertical jump. One's how far you can jump, the other's how high you can jump. And then shuttle and three cone, which are both agility drills on the grass. Um, So as you can see from these tables on the left with all the positions, it seems like, if you can jump further, you can also jump higher, which makes more sense. And you could be able to predict someone's vertical jump from their broad jump like fairly accurately from this, although not super well. But then if you look at individual positions, the relationship between these two variables is not as good. Like you can't predict as well, even though I guess you can't really predict in these graphs either. Um, so yeah, I guess it is necessary that we can differentiate between the physical abilities of these players. We need both of these, like vertical jump and broad jump, and shuttle and three cone, because they measure slightly different things. So for positions like that I have here in this left graph, like cornerback, receiver, running back, safety, you definitely need speed in those positions, and people highlight the importance of getting a good 40 time to show the teams that you're fast enough. So I'm graphing average 40-yard dash time on the x-axis and pick on the y-axis. And again, it's a very weak relationship, although it seems like, if you want to get drafted in the top 100, you've got to be decently fast, like run at least a 4.55 here. And then with all the other positions, you really can't see a relationship at all between 40-yard dash and pick. And I'm thinking this is due partially in part by the fact that, players who are slower probably spent more time to focus on other aspects of their game, which are not measured by the 40-yard dash. And then they get picked earlier based on those traits. And then these graphs are all the same graph for each position. On the x-axis is guaranteed contract value, and y-axis is percent guaranteed. So the general trend in all of these, it looks like, is that when guaranteed contract value is low, usually percent guaranteed is also low. It's like prove it deals, I guess, where the team's like, we don't know if you're good or not, but if you are, sure, we'll give you some money. That's not always the case. There are some high percent guarantees for low contract values. And it looks like as the guaranteed contract value increases, the percent guaranteed tends to go towards the middle. So a good amount of guaranteed money and a good amount of non-guaranteed money in those contracts.
Initially, when reviewing this data, we had considered calculating the return on investment using total career games per draft pick. However, we recognized that comparing players across different draft years unfairly favored the older players who had more seasons to accumulate games. So instead, we elected to shift to analyzing ROI by position, which allows us to fairly assess trends without being biased about those different career lengths. This approach also provided actionable insights for the team's draft strategy and salary cap management. To evaluate player value relative to financial investment of the different teams drafting them, we compared the number of career games played to the total contract value across 5 key positions, including wide receiver, running back, cornerback, quarterback, and outside linebacker. This approach allowed us to assess durability and longevity of those positions alongside the cost of the team's investment in each player. By focusing on these positions, we were able to identify trends in which roles consistently offered better games played per dollar spent. This comparison also accounts for position-specific differences in career length, injury risk, and helps teams optimize salary cap allocations based on historical return on investment patterns. The data that we collected and filtered through showed that wide receivers and running backs tend to have the highest return on investment per player, while quarterbacks and outside linebackers have the lowest relative to their draft and salary cost, which was particularly interesting considering you often think of quarterbacks as kind of the star of the show in football. I constructed the following charts to show the different trends between the positions that we had evaluated. which was very interesting, noting that running backs over time seem to have the most steady rate of ROI, return on investment, for the teams that they sign versus positions like quarterback and linebacker seem a little more scattered. We didn't have as much data for cornerbacks for the first 10 or so years of the data, so those numbers are a little bit more skewed than the other positions, but it still gives us a nice visual to compare the ROI trends over years based on different popular positions in football. We also asked what players had the longest careers. So, unsurprisingly, Tom Brady is just off the charts compared to the other players, but players like Brandon McManus and Larry Fitzgerald also at the top of that list. Um, Longevity at the highest level is rare in football. It's a very physically demanding sport, and career averages are about 3.3 years. And these players are clearly outliers. We included the top 20 in our list playing, between 1,500 and 2,000, or 1,500 to 3,000 games, which is impressive over the course of their career. Keeping in mind that as we explore these time-based data sets, that it's dependent on how long players have been in their position, been drafted to the NFL. Players who haven't been in the league as long have less games to show for that. One thing to keep in mind is that higher round draft picks have more opportunities to stay on rosters. So even if their performance isn't as outstanding as other players, it impacts their career average. Where lower round picks might have shorter careers, and not because of their ability, but they just have fewer chances to develop. So career longevity in football isn't just a reflection of talent. It's definitely also influenced by opportunity and team investment in those players. And after looking at the longest individual careers, I wanted to zoom out and explore how draft round and position affected career longevity as well. These graphs show the average number of career games played, and I used filters in Power BI to break that information down by both draft round and position to kind of pinpoint some more niche numbers. So overall, players picked earlier, especially in first round, tend to have longer careers. And you can see that in the first round draft pick graph. You can see that defensive backs, defensive ends, and wide receivers consistently have higher career game totals when they are first round draft picks. As we move to the second and third rounds, the average number of games for a player drop, but the same positions like defensive back and wide receiver still show pretty strong longevity. Moving to fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh round picks, the trend becomes even more noticeable. The career longevity decreases pretty significantly, and the curve becomes much steeper. It's much harder for late round picks, as I mentioned earlier, to stick around, but fewer positions like defensive backs and running backs still show some players having pretty long careers. Overall, the data supports that earlier draft round picks produce players who not only get more opportunities during their career, but have longer and more stable careers, especially at some of these key skilled positions. This chart shows the average draft round by position, giving insight into how teams are prioritizing those different positions during the draft. We can see defensive linemen and offensive linemen are typically drafted pretty late, 5th, 6th round draft picks, meaning that teams are placing less value on building a strong line of play, where they're focusing more on nose tackles and quarterbacks, which are a little bit cut off here, but these two positions. And this trend could reflect just the prioritization in those quarterback and nose tackle positions versus how their defensive strategy comes into play later.